copied you on the link, and I'm sharing it with you.
John Michael, can you tag I'm in the public one now, so just tag it and
Okay.
post the link to my personal.
On the B Kindle.
Yeah, the personal, the one where I have the bank on it. You know what I'm saying?
Is it the one with you and the kids in it?
Yeah,
All
just the
right.
kids. Yeah. Good look.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna go live. I'm gonna be live on the public.
Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, March 2nd, 2019, and welcome to the Multifarious Man Podcast Live. We are here again at the D&G Deli and Grill at 233 East Bay Street in Jacksonville. And once again, we're joined by our featured guests, BK and Christina Kittle. On today's show, we are going to discuss politics on the local level. Coming up, there's the mayoral election here in Jacksonville, so we're going to discuss a little bit about the two candidates, and that's why we have B and Christina. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and in 30 seconds, we're going to get right into it. Thank you.
Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm the multifarious man.
Like that'll take them right to the podcast where they can listen to it. All right, we're back with the Multifarious Man Podcast Live, March 2nd, 2019 at the D&G Deli and Grill here in Jacksonville, Florida, with BK and Christina Kittle. So we're going to get right into it and talk about the candidates for the upcoming election. So who wants to take first?
Well, let's. I think let's do the backdrop where, just in looking, in researching the candidates, right? Like the first thing that pops out to you is, we're in Jacksonville and we don't have a Democratic candidate, right? And so that's the first thing that jumped out. I think that's the thing we want to. I think that's the thing first that we need to kind of talk through and address. I know we had a few scandals going on. I don't want to get into that, but that definitely plays a factor on, the choices here. So that was the first thing that popped out. Why don't we have that, right? And then the second thing was like, now I'm diving into the two candidates who are the front runners, and I didn't see what the clear difference was.
So to be clear, so the current mayor of Jacksonville is Mayor Lenny Curry, and he became mayor in 2015 when he defeated the incumbent Alvin Brown, who was a Democrat. So right now, this is Mayor Curry's first re-election bid on the Republican ticket, and like B said, there are no challengers on the Democratic side. So we have Mayor Lenny Curry, and the front runner also, or second place right now, is Councilwoman Anna Broche. And if I Broche, thank you. I knew I was going to butcher the name.
Can you hear me? Okay, yeah, so. Yeah, Anna Brochet is the, most competition. She's also a Republican, so that was definitely the first thing that I noticed as well, was that there's no Democratic contender. Not sure why we went blue. We became blue vol for Gillum for the first time since like the 80s. So there is definitely a want and a desire for, somebody on the left or a Democratic candidate to run. I'm honestly not really sure what happened there. I don't work with the Democratic Party as much. I mean, I worked, to help Billy Broussard, who was running as a Democrat for a Senate seat. But as for that flaw, because that's like a very critical flaw, you know what I mean?
Right.
So do you guys think, so with, all of the sweat that was poured behind Gillum, do you think maybe after that election took place, do you think maybe there was apathy with the public, or people just weren't paying attention and they didn't take care of business when they needed to?
No, I don't think that this is a people problem. I think it's a Democratic organizational problem. The party is supposed to organize candidates and have them ready. There was definitely a desire from the people to want a candidate.
Yeah, but doesn't that have to come from the ground too? So like, who is the candidate, right? Like who's the prospect? Like you can't have a party, just drop somebody in, right? It's like somebody has to have that credibility. Somebody has to have that tie to the community. Somebody should have been next up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, somebody should have been ready. It's like, so you have the Democratic Party on the local level. I'm not sure what happened. I know that there, like you said earlier, there's like scandals and stuff, and a lot of like internal, obstacles that they had. And we really don't need to speak too much about that kind of stuff. But that's the kind of stuff that does, at the end of the day, get in the way of organizing on an efficient level. And I think the fact that they didn't have a candidate prepped and ready to go, or even anybody from within their party to step up to the plate, kind of shows, we were targeting, our organization and a lot of other organizations were targeting Garrett Dennis. So when we would go to council and city hall, we were trying to reach Garrett Dennis because he was the one who was vocal for a little while, expressing some opposition to some of the moves that the current mayor was making. Of course, he was dragged in the media. They tried to dig up dirt on the guy. Guy has a clean record, so it didn't really get very far. But, the minute that he started expressing concerns about Mayor Curry's city spending and kind of addressing community concerns that we were bringing to council, I'm not sure if he just didn't really want to run for mayor, but we thought he was going to be the guy. And I guess our group, since we're not the Democratic Party, I guess we just kind of, because we're more of a vanguard group, so like what we like to do is we like to kind of go to City Hall sometimes with issues and kind of scout and see who would be somebody who could represent us. And we saw that it was Dennis, so we started kind of giving talking points like, hey, the community cares about this, this, and this. We went canvassing in, the north side and found that this is an issue. What do you think? Like, tell us from your mouths what you feel about this. And Dennis was the one who was pretty responsive. Roche was as well. We just assumed because she was a Republican that she wouldn't actually run against, you know what I mean? So we thought it was going to be Dennis. We were hoping that the Democratic Party would kind of then take the bait that we were putting out for them and kind of get him involved, So
what's the name of your organization?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jacksonville Community Action Committee. So the CAC we call ourselves. But yeah, we but it was other groups too. So the community organizations were kind of trying to set it up that way. But whenever you do something in the community, it takes the whole community to kind of be on the same page. And they're, and I'll take a criticism for that too. Is like, we maybe weren't as connected, or there was some kind of disconnect there, because the bottom line is it didn't happen. So this is what we have now. But Brochet was also very vocal about a lot of the community concerns, and so I guess she just kind of sees the opportunity. So just happens to be another Republican.
And the thing is, and just to level set, I'm not pro any candidate or against any candidate. I, in my free time, like studying politics. So it's just something that interests me, has always. My grandmother, raised me watching much of the O'Reilly stuff, and the whole political spectrum was one of her things, and she passed away, earlier last year, and so that's where I actually get my love for just studying politics. And just to also say, I did reach out to both of the front runners via email, on their City of Jacksonville emails. I did get response from the mayor. He seemed open to engaging. And just letting the people know what plans were out there, what programs were out there, and what he had to offer. I've yet to hear back from Anna Brochet, so that's just where we stand as of now. One of the things about the whole BK thing called Beloved Movement is, I'm about knowledge. I'm not about politics. I'm about knowledge and empowerment. I'm about people equipping themselves with knowledge so that they can then run after whatever goals they have and execute on whatever they need to execute in order to get some money, right? Or in order to be happy, right? Like, there's things that you need to know, and you need to, rehearse and study in your mind to get you at a place where you're meeting your goals, right? It just doesn't happen. And so if you look at the page, it's something that, my family does, and is basically all about empowering others. I think more young families, need to come out here, especially the young black families in Jacksonville that are doing something. Like, you need to show up. You need to show up. You need to do something. You need to start trying to connect with the youth. If you're not, you're part of the problem.
So what can we do different? I mean, it's, you got a couple of weeks coming up to election. Do we think there's going to be a decent turnout? Do you think, are there people in the city that think, oh, there's only Republicans running, so that means that I can't vote? What do you think is going to happen, and, how do we counteract it?
I definitely, and it is unfortunate, but at the same time, it's reality. I definitely think that a lot of people just look for the political marker next to the name, because in theory, being a Democrat or a Republican tells a voter that they align on some level with their values. So people might not know the name Anna Brochet. People might not know, they should know Lenny Curry's our current mayor, you know what I mean? But, like, they might just see another Republican as, like, the choice, and it might, it definitely could encourage voter apathy, you know what I mean? They might just skip it altogether. They might not know.
But to be fair, has Anna Brochet differentiated herself enough from the mayor?
So I would say yes, but I'm also way more involved than the average person. You know what I mean? Like, I think, like, the average working class person out on the west side, you know what I mean, who doesn't, like, come out to city hall events and stuff like that, I think they might not really know, you know what I mean? Like, I would say that she has been doing a good job, but again, it just goes back to people are very trained to see the, Dem or Rep, like, next to the names. So unfortunately, even though, like, I do think she's done a pretty good job, I still think there's just a percentage of voters who, like, either they're overworked or they have other things going on in their life, or they're just not super political, but maybe they still go out to vote. Like, they really are just looking to see who's in their party. Like we were talking earlier, you know how a lot of people see it as like my team versus your team,
Right.
and that's pretty much the depth of their political understanding. Unfortunately, that is like a trend, and a lot of people, you know, that's as far as they'll go with it. So there's just always that hurdle.
The thing I saw, so like in studying the platforms, right? Like I saw, you know, Anna Brochet was making an issue of, you know, it was cronyism and it was bullying, right?
Yeah.
Those are the things that she's running on. Aside from that, you know, the posturing of saying that she helped stop the sale of JEA, you know, the private sale of JEA. So, like, when you talk about the cronyism and the transparency and things of that nature, I myself thought that if you're running on transparency, you know, and a common citizen reaches out to you, I was expecting to hear back from her.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so she, well, just as a point to that, she did come out to 2 community events that were planned, where Mayor Curry was also invited but just didn't show up to. So,
Yep.
you know, she definitely does make a community effort. Curry also does do community efforts. I guess they just kind of each pick and choose which ones they want to go to.
Right.
Which, you know, that's their strategy. We'll see how it works out for them in the polls, you know what I mean? Because, like, last night, for example, Jacksonville Community Action Committee and the New Florida Majority hosted candidate not really debates. It was like a panel where the community asked questions directly to candidates. And Anna Brochet was there, Jimmy Hill, who's another Republican running, and Omega Allen, who's NPA, non-party affiliated, running. And we got to ask them questions directly about some of the issues. Lenny Curry was invited, but his chair sat empty. You know what I mean? Sheriff Mike Williams also didn't show up, but his opponent, Tony Cummings, did, and they were very engaged with the community. And a lot of these like activist groups and organizations and community groups were all set up around there and stuff. So it was a very good event to really have a more intimate conversation and less of you know, those one-liners, those zingers,
Right.
like that don't really mean anything. You know what I mean?
What would you say, or what were some of the takeaways or the questions out of there, the themes?
Well, our group was very excited that because we got to talk to them about what we talked about last week, which is a JPAC, a Jacksonville Police Accountability Council, and basically integrating the community into like having some form or some system of actual accountability for those police that commit misconduct, so that we can work on rebuilding actual trust with the police. Because Mayor Curry's main platform is crime. That's how he beat Alvin Brown, was saying he was going to reduce crime. You know, everyone's concern was, well, what are your tactics for reducing crime? His tactic was policing, just putting a bunch of money into policing, adding police to the force, you know, just heavy patrolling. There's no correlation between more cops and less crime, and it shows, like, crime has not been significantly reduced. And so basically that was the main concern, was if we're going to keep adding police, and you know, you go to this no snitch thing, it's like, we agree we want to find people who are committing crimes. First, we agree, though, that crime has more of a social root to it, so we need to look there. We need to look at the communities that are high crime, maybe solve some of the poverty and infrastructure issues. So that was one thing. But then also, we just need to have better communication with the police. We can't have police, you know, judging or being the oversight accountability force as well as doing their job, which is policing.
And the thing there is, like, you know, just, you know, if people didn't know, I come from a law enforcement, you know, background family, right? Like my grandfather was one of the first 6 black police officers here. My dad is a retired FBI agent. You know, my dad's uncle was, you know, a sergeant in Gainesville at the, you know, same time my granddad was a sergeant here. So, you know, the Kendall family, like, we come from law enforcement. That said, you know, I've also been, you know, racially profiled and, you know, all of that. So I understand, you know, both sides of the coin on that. But the thing I will say is, like, you know, community policing, and that's, I think we were talking about this last week, is community policing is very important, right?
Yeah, every candidate agreed that was there. Every candidate said that they were 100% open to the idea of, to just ideas from the community about how to get them more involved and have a more direct line of contact. You know, a JPAC is very specific. It's not like a citizen review board, because we already have citizen review boards. A JPAC is pretty much modeled off of Chicago's push, which they're calling it a CPAC, Civilian Police Accountability Council. They already have 71 alderman votes in support of their push. We're just starting this here in Jacksonville. This is still a very abstract concept to people in Jacksonville. But basically, the difference between a citizen review board and a civilian police accountability council is that citizen review boards, A, are handpicked by the mayor, and it almost always is like cops or ex-cops.
What is the and this is just like, you know, just curiosity on my side, like wouldn't you say that there is some sort of threshold needed to separate the, you know, I'll say some of the, you know, ridiculous claims against the police versus, you know, legitimate? So, like, I think some of the worry or the, you know, some of the apprehension on that is that, you know, if you get, you know, the untrained eye, yes, or the somebody with a political view or, you know, an agenda looking at this, you know, like the police don't want to, like the police aren't one of the regular people that want to go home. Yeah, some of them, you know, are you know, are wrong, right, in what they do. But you know, that small population within the force shouldn't. You know,
yeah, that's actually a really great point, because that is one of the biggest hurdles that we always face when we propose this idea. Is immediately people go back to the our team versus your team and start throwing like the thin blue line rhetoric, and it's just like, look, we're saying not your team versus our team. We're saying we're all a community and we need to all be on the same page. So it's impossible for the police to be on the same page as the community if every time we propose ideas to integrate the community with the police, it's met with hostility from, and you know, and a lot of that goes back to just misrepresentation in the media. You know, anytime we have any kind of rally or any kind of town hall, I always look to see what the headlines say, and it's always just like anti-police group attacks, you know, and we're just like, first of all, we're not anti-anything. We're pro-accountability and we're pro-community.
That was one of the reasons I invited, you know, everybody out here to something like this, because, you know, we don't have, you know, we don't have an agenda to where it's like, you know, if Christina says something that's off collar to me, like, I'm going to push back on that, and like vice versa. Like, we're going to have that dialogue that's not disrespectful and doesn't like make somebody a caricature.
No, this is exactly the way it's supposed to be. You know, it's like the only time people are afraid to have actual dialogue and find like a point of understanding is if they do have an agenda. None of us are being paid to be here. We're not endorsed by any candidates. Like, we legitimately just care about the community. I'm a school teacher. Y'all have kids. Like, it matters, especially to this next generation coming up. Right. You know what I mean? So it's like we have the responsibility to just have to try to come together and really understand this. Like, you know, we looked at Chicago for next moves and steps to make it happen, because they already have the support of 71 of their local politicians, as well as like local universities and professors that are supporting this idea. The sociology department from Chicago came down related to another issue with police reform, but I asked her if she knew about the CPAC push, and she not only knew about it, she said her whole sociology department, I don't know what university it was, but like all of her students are looking into it in more detail as well.
But also like when you say Chicago, like me, you know, it's like do we know that they have their own situation under control? You know, like how are we going to go to them to ask us?
Right? So I read that article that like someone had the audacity to tell us how to handle our crimes. Like, y'all are still working out the kinks.
Right.
So let's calm down with that. Like, so no, and also we have different obstacles than Chicago. So it wouldn't be an exact blueprint, but the proposal for a CPAC, we call it a JPAC, a Jacksonville Police Accountability Council. The basic points are on track enough to where we would certainly have to tweak it for Jacksonville, which is what we're trying to work very hard to get representatives, to even get the police to not just immediately be resistant to it, to like actually hear us out. We have other groups that they hear what we're saying, but then they turn it into like what is it called? Neighborhood watch kind of thing, which we absolutely do not want. We do not want any more George Zimmermans with their own guns thinking that that's like community policing. That is not what we're talking about. So we're still at that basic level of explaining what we actually mean and like fighting the barriers of what people already perceive it to be. But like ideally it would be a council democratically elected, and it has to be civilian representatives. So they can't have like any tie, like no politicians and no former police, because that's too much of a bias already. Like politicians already have like their sponsors. They have people that they have to.
Why would you say former police would be a bias though?
Well, because they tend to have a bias towards the cop. Like that's the issue we have right now, is that the police internally investigate each other, and then our citizen review boards that exist.
I could see, but I would argue former police, like that that in being retired or outside the force, you know, there's an air of separation there, you know.
So they already have seats on the already existing review boards, which in theory, like, you know, in an ideal situation where this would work, they would have contact with the JPAC. You know what I mean? It's like all of them would be communicating with each other.
Because you have to think, at least, I mean, I'll just say in Jacksonville, you got to have enough retired former law enforcement that's not even from the area. So then you have the point of view. It's like, look, I understand. I've been there. You know, I've been in the street. Yeah. So holistically, I can understand from the point of view of law enforcement, the boots on the ground. But yet, you know, it's like you're removed from the bias of having been local,
the pressure of like,
where it's like your buddies are still on the force.
Which is the problem we have today. Like, that is 100% one of the issues. Because, you know, like, I hate it when my classroom gets judged by my, like, I was talking earlier, I have a class of 31 students, and then I have one kid every day who just turns up to, like, the highest degree. But then all of my students suddenly are gangbangers and thugs and horrible kids. And I'm just like, no, there is one kid every day, and he just thinks school's a party. But, like, the rest of my kids shouldn't be
I was
judged.
that kid.
Yeah.
That was
I don't know. This kid's
that was me and Adam. Like, shout out to Adam.
No, I got all of my kids
Adam
are wild.
Brooks in the building,
that.
man.
But this
you
kid has,
you
like...
follow, we leave.
But, like, this kid, you know, I hate that, like, the whole bunch gets judged, like my class gets judged as being like, oh, these kids don't want to learn, these kids don't care. I'm like, that is 100% false. And it's like, but the tendency to do that exists everywhere, you know what I mean? And it's like, and, you know, law enforcement, you have you have cops who think they're above the law, and it's not the whole force. And then you have the rest of the cops who maybe want to say something about it or maybe come out about it. And then they get pressure, you know, so it's just like...
And so that's a problem. So it's like, if you think about it, if you're on the force and the situation comes up, I mean, just like in any organization where, you know, you want to say that you're given the opportunity to speak up if you see a problem, but in reality, there's the pressure of, you know, well, now no one's going to have my back if something goes wrong. And it truly is a life and death situation.
That's the difference, is that, like, it is literally life and death for them, and then also for, like, the community. You know what I mean? If we have one cop who's just, you know, gets the whole, you know, is like, thinks he's above the law. Like, first of all, that guy's got a gun. So it's kind of hard to stick up to somebody who's got this mentality. Even if it's just one person who has a bunch of weapons, makes it different.
But how do, so pivoting, like, how do, like, solution-wise, right? Like, how do you go about solving that? Like, the main thing is, you know, getting people engaged, right? Getting people to understand one another's viewpoint. Like, what the thing is, you know, if everybody's stuck in, you know, villainizing the other, then we don't get to that, you know, common understanding. Like the police, right? They want to come home. They want to, you know, go home to their families, you know. And I also, you know, I also know that there's people that are on the other side that don't want to be stopped for, you know, a seatbelt violation and then, you know, end up getting shot. So, I mean, the thing is, it's two sides to the coin, but there's also, you know, room for common ground. I think something like this is a good venue for people to start coming out and understanding each other. Like, I don't have an agenda. I don't get paid by anything going on in this city, right? And so the thing is, this is something we as a family, you know, my family puts time towards to getting people to come out and engage and read books, you know, and you all, right? Like, you know, my you know, I have a good team of people that come out here and dedicate, you know, good time, right? They dedicate their time towards getting people engaged. So I think more of this, and that's the thing, when you come at it from a lens of new creative ideas that don't have bureaucracy, like, the thing is, I take money out of my family to do this, right? There's no, like, I'm not trying to profit, and so, like, this type of event is something that is cheap. If you look at a funding thing, you know, this could happen on every city block with the current funding if people had the heart, right? And that's on, you can't blame that on the police. You got to say, okay, do we have reverends in here taking money? Do we have, you know, people who are the upstanding citizens or figureheads? Where's all the money going to outreach with the community? Like, are they taking a big cut of it? And now we have these, you know, funding issues, or we can't reach people.
So again, what you made a key point, and again, this is Multifarious Man Podcast live at the D&G Deli and Grill at 233 East Bay Street in Jacksonville with Christina, Kittle, and BK. So you talk about transparency, and that's a big thing. And I know one of the candidates, Anna Brochet, one of the things she tried to push through on the council was, you know, to make sure that any communication with lobbyists or any funding, that the council had to make that public. So you think about something on that line when you mentioned something about the pastor that you think, you know, where's the money going, the local businessman that's involved in it. So how much transparency do we need to bring, or should we bring? And I understand from a private sector that's, you know, this is our business, but it's someone in the public eye, whether it's our politicians, whether it's our local clergy, because then the average person says, oh, you're tax exempt, but where's the money going?
Right.
So how much of that, you know, it's like, well, how much do you bring in to show people this is what we're doing, this is where the money's going, and make that across the board? So then it makes it easier for someone to have a voice if people know, oh, I can see everything that you're doing. I know who you're communicating with. But you're right, all the different councils that people are on. People are, assigned seats on boards. All these different things.
You can do an event like this on every, damn near on every city block, for the low, as we say. Like, if it's really honest, it can be done, and it isn't something that takes a big line item out of the budget. The problem is it's, 9 times out of 10, it's not really honest. And so that's another reason why we're here, and why, I appreciate Christina and John Michael, like, because I know with you guys, we can come in and we can talk business, and we can talk politics, and it be no spin and no BS.
Yeah, like, it's just, I really just want everybody to seriously think, like, especially the way that I talk to people about JPAC, again, because it's, like, so abstract still, and people still have their preconceived notions, and it's usually what the media spins any proposal for accountability to be. So it's like, I just try to think of people, like, talking about getting the community involved and these figureheads involved. It's like a JPAC would be democratically elected community members from each police district. So it's like, I always ask people, it's like, okay, think of somebody in your district who you think would bring something to the table, like on a board like that. I always think about LGBT law, because we had the highest transgender death rate last year. And one of the things was the police, a lot of them didn't really know about federal law, Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Jr. law, which is like, it's an HRO to protect transgender victims. I brought it up with them, and a lot of them just didn't know about it. And then when I tried to bring it up to them, I think they were already on the defensive, because they're used to being just like attacked and torn apart by the media and stuff. But I'm genuinely just trying to be like, hey, you need to follow this law, because, basically the part that they didn't follow was they went by the coroner's report. And the coroner's report says that this victim is a male. And they went by the legal name that the victim had. So everyone knew this person as Celine Walker, a black woman, but they were saying, Cedric Walker, a black man. So when they were investigating, a lot of the witnesses were confused. They were like, yeah, we don't know a black man named Cedric Walker. So they weren't getting the right accounts. Matthew Shepard, James Byrd Jr. law is a federal law. It's not a state law, so they don't have to follow it, but it's a federal law that helps with those investigations so you can apprehend somebody. So it became very much like an opinion thing. Like, oh, well, we have to go by this, and it's okay if you don't believe. I mean, it's not okay, but some people don't believe in that, and it's just like, okay, you know what? That's your personal lifestyle. You don't have to believe in people being transgender, even though they exist. So, but like, It
sounds like they needed some direction, like
exactly.
they needed some direction, and that they were.
But yeah, it's like their job is to police, and it's like there's so many laws and like federal laws, and for different people and different things and different issues, and it's like if you're called on the job and like you think that that's the way you're supposed to do it, so you're doing it how you think you're supposed to be doing it, and then a bunch of people are coming at you like, well, this is wrong, blah, 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 and you don't know which voice to listen to, because that was such a big story, because then again, after the first person was on, it was back-to-back-to-back attacks after that. And so at that point, they had so many groups coming at them that it's just like, if we had a JPAC and we elected somebody to be in charge of LGBT issues with the police, that could be the liaison, that could be the person who talks to them. They created a liaison team within the police force, but that's not quite what we're talking about. We're talking about a community member that can just be like, hey, we need to hold you accountable to this, and now you know. Like,
so what do you say to the police officer who, rightfully so, says, look, all I can do is enforce the laws that are on the books? Like, what do you say to them? Or you say the conservative in this scenario that falls back and just doesn't know how to deal with, the LGBTQ community, and they always, it's almost like they go into a shell, and it's like, well, I don't want to hear that because I'm not listening to you because it doesn't exist. I can't, how do you counteract?
So to that to me, it's not like so much an individual issue. because again, their job is to just police. To me, it is a systemic issue.
It's like a knowledge share, learning curve. Like the thing is, people need to be, educated on that, and there's a deeper, like, I think what you're saying is a messaging thing where people need to understand and be educated on, on the whole, the
this
reality.
Is a serious issue, so it's like I'm trying my best I can to educate them, but if I don't have like the authority to, like a JPAC would have the authority to, so that's somebody that they know that they can listen to because it is recognized as having the authority and the final, like the voice and be the power that can do that. But me as an individual, even with all the community groups that I'm a part of, we don't really have we can't sway these individual officers who are already overwhelmed, who already have the media in their face, who already have a bunch of other groups that are claiming to be the group. It's like when you have a bunch of people in your face saying that they're the group. No, we. Of course, you're not going to listen to anybody. So it's like it's a problem that we have all the time.
So what is bringing it back to the election? Like, what is to the voter, right? If they have two, and I keep saying two because the front runners, right?
Yeah.
It's like if they have two choices, what's the difference between, the candidates on these issues, right? Like when I was researching, I didn't see where the difference was called out, on the. For Mayor Curry, I could look at the budget, right, and I could see, he actually put his money where his mouth is on a few places because there's increased spending in arts and in entertainment, in the proposal. Like there's public safety, I think was $800,000 less. So it was like, he did spend money on it seemed like the public programs that were away from police, right? And so I searched, I didn't find a brochure proposal. Like I searched all week, right? Didn't find anything.
Yeah, there's.
So to me it was like, I was like, what the hell? Like, what is it? What is this?
I'm
right?
gonna have to unite with you on that because I'm just gonna say, like, straight up, her. I know a lot about her, but again, I'm like just way more involved than the average citizen, and like everything to me goes back to organization and like strategy and campaigning and having all your like T's crossed and I's dotted, because like she has to understand that like people who will work all day, like they're going to go online and try to read up on you, and if they can't find it readily available, that hurts you.
And that's me. Like, like I'm working, right?
So exactly. It's like I know that she is the one who started the Civil Rights Task Force and everything, and like she's the one who made sure that like Rodney L. Hearst never about a hot dog and a Coke and everything, like A. Philip Randolph's like marches and stuff. She's the one who basically kind of spearheaded the idea of starting or making sure that Jacksonville civil rights history was not forgotten, and kind of just making it more available for people. So, like, I know that she's invested in that kind of stuff. I know that she, does a lot for the community. But that's only because I go to all these things all the time. And I'm sorry, it's not
like
a lot
what
of
is
other people.
What's the thing is, like, and I always look at the money, right? Like, where is the difference in where she would spend money?
Ooh, so
where's the difference in the land? Like, what's going to happen with the landing?
Yeah,
like,
so because she is a Republican, and this is why she might not even win the election. It's because she's a Republican. Just like Lenny Curry, she also has sponsors that she has to worry about keeping satisfied, basically. So she is not taking a very strong stance on that kind of stuff.
Not only Republican, though.
Oh, yeah, but like, but the problem is that she can't be vocal about where. That is one of her biggest flaws, is people asking, okay, where are you going to pull the money? And she kind of, will not openly come out of the gate and have a clear, decisive answer on that. So we can't read your mind, Anna. We don't know what you're really thinking here. But at the same time, like, she just she doesn't want her sponsors to, she doesn't want to slip up and say anything that they would consider too extreme, even though the community wants answers. So it's not really a great, that's not one of the good things that's going for her.
It's and just to reiterate, like this forum is open for every candidate.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an agenda. I don't care either way. I just looked at the top 2 candidates because I don't have time to go into all of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
I just don't have time. So that's the thing. Every candidate can come out here, talk about what they want to talk about, and I'm not going to try to, play gotcha games or any of that. Like, what I want, right, and and I'll say it again, what a BK thing called Beloved is about is empowerment, personal empowerment. If individuals don't know what's going on, you have to educate them. You have to engage them. You have to make attempts to engage them. There's trends going. People go to politicians have always gone to the church. That's been the old trend, right? You look at all the new trends, churches ain't filling up. Okay, so that church play, right, is dying. And so you got to get out here in the street and you got to talk to somebody, you got to shake somebody's hand, and you got to be open, right? And you can't, it can't be a lot of the kid gloves on. You got to go get out in the street, talk to somebody without anybody in the middle of it.
So what do you say to that candidate with, you're right, that's the old ways of getting the information out and, but then again, actually coming out to community events and speaking to people in person, that's always been available. But now you have the church of the internet, where people's attention spans are shorter. They only look to see what's on the news to reinforce what they already believe. They only follow the feeds of someone that's already parroting what they want to hear. So, of course, they're excited about what they heard because it's what they already believe. They're not looking like I know we do, where, we're looking at the Fox News. We're looking at conservative media. Because why? Because it's important to know everything about the people that make up your community, whether you agree with them or not. So where does this connect? Like, when you look at the fundraising between the 2 candidates, it's not even close. So how do you say to someone like Anna Brochet, well, you need to speak up even though your sponsors may not like it. But then she's like, well, where am I going to get the money to compete with the incumbent if, I can only speak so much truth. It's like I can only be a little bit off center from that candidate. So then now you're not distinguishing yourself, and the people are going to go, well, why should I vote for you if you're just like the person that's already in office?
Well, I think you nailed it. I think it's because so here's my thinking. If I were, Anna Brochet, I'd be like, the people who are already watching the news to already hear what they want to hear are already going to vote for Curry regardless. So she needs to stop trying to appease them or worry even about them. Like, the reason I think bullying and cronying is such a big deal for her is because that's what's happening to her. Obviously, that is exactly what's happening to her. But, like, at the same time, it's just like, you're not going to win any of those people over no matter how in the middle you stay on an issue. What you're going to do is you're going to isolate all the other people who want you to represent them more than you are.
That's why I was surprised, like, because I have the wild hair, all of this stuff, right? Like, I was surprised to hear back from Curry because I told him, check me online, look at what it is I'm about, right? And so, and I told both of them that, and I hear back from Curry. I wasn't even expecting to hear back, but he seemed more open to engage, which was, that was surprising to me. So, like, the thing is, it's like, if we know, and then like if you look at some of these city council meeting minutes, or you look at the videos, and people are like, oh, well, there's a sense of hopelessness in the community. Well, get out and engage, right? Get out and engage. So you can't say, to me, the disconnect is if Anna Brochet is saying she's running on transparency, and if I don't know none of these candidates, which I didn't, and if I send 2 emails, saying, hey, come out and just speak to the people on your own terms, and I hear back from, Mayor Curry, like, what the hell, like, she's not being transparent.
Yeah, no, she, like, I've seen her at events where Curry hasn't gone, and then I've seen Curry respond to things that she hasn't, so I'm like,
But this is not, this event, like, I'm just a regular Joe Blow. I'm not an organization. I don't have any type of, so when you go to some of these events, you're dealing with a machine that has an agenda. When I tell them, no agenda, no machine, this shit is books coming out of the trunk of my car, for the people, and it's, people setting up volunteering time.
Yep.
And then no show, like, come on.
I definitely just think it goes back again to organization. Like, it's this whole election is very alarming on the organizational level. Going back to the Democrats not having anyone prepped and ready to go because, that, like, so if we break it down and, like, everyone in the community gets involved, but we also have jobs when we get involved. So it's like, okay, my groups that I'm involved with, we do vanguard organizing, which is getting the community aware and getting them to be engaged and come out. And then part of that is kind of weeding out, like, the responses that we get from leaders. And it's like, okay, Tommy Hazouri, I'm going to throw him under the bus, like, doesn't agree with a lot of the things that we're doing, even though he's a Democrat. So we know not to target him for something. But Garrett Dennis is very vocal. So now we know that because we've been to enough city halls to where he's consistently been vocal about the issues that we bring up. So it's like, okay, we're going out, we're canvassing, we're knocking on doors, we're asking people what are some of the big issues, how do they feel about things, bringing it to City Hall, getting the conversation going. The job of the political parties is to be organized. So it's like the Republicans did it. They know what the issues are because they were listening. So they had their candidates ready. The Democrat Party was supposed to be doing the same thing as well, but it didn't work out. So that's, one ball dropped. And then now we have Anna Brochet. It was like, okay, I guess we'll work with this. But then her campaign not responding to, simple things or just not having an easily available source of information to educate voters on who she even is.
Like a plan.
It
was literally, I searched for a plan.
Yeah, I was frustrated going to the website. It gives a lot of information about her background. But I'm used to. I mean, let's face it. The thing these days for any candidate running for any office, their website should be very simple to navigate.
Yes.
There should be a background, tells you about family, but then there should be a button that just says issues. Because how do you distinguish as an individual now? And let's face it. That's how before I go to the ballot box for anything, I look at the issues and see who fits in most in line. I'm not automatically going to turn off. Say, well, they have an R in front of their name, so I'm going to ignore them completely.
But
because
think about the meme culture we're in. Like people are already going off memes.
Mm-hmm.
So if people are educating themselves on memes, and you don't have a one-pager out here where people can Google, then what the hell is
poor
going
planning. On? It's a lot of balls being dropped all around, which is very unfortunate because the Gillum campaign showed that we want the change, that we want, this is what we want. But, like, it's not, I don't know. I don't have the answers for that.
Is it just, people going, well, somebody's going to do it? Do you think, do you really think that's what happened? People put all their energy in it, and it frustrates me to know when people put all their energy into something and they just simply stop. It's like, well, we didn't win, so we're not going to do anything. And it's like, are you kidding me? That's like banging
Well, I
your
mean,
head
some
into the
people-
wall.
In this case, yeah, some people were supposed to do it. It was the Democratic Party.
No,
There's,
that's-
like, an
I mean,
organization that
that's
was
my
literally
point.
supposed
Yeah.
to do it. And then, like, the issue with that is, like, they would have had eager, ready community people who would have been out canvassing and getting information out there again, like they did for Gillum, because it's like, you know, that's like the function of an organization is to get people involved who maybe don't have the experience to do it, but it's like now they have an org structure to tell them, okay, well, this is your job now. It's like how you did for Gillum, we're doing for candidate XYZ, you know. So it's just like, but if you don't do your job, you can't delegate jobs to anyone in the community because there's no, it's a mess. It's a mess.
That's wild, man.
Yeah.
It's wild. That's the thing. Like when last week when it was like, all right, we're gonna look at the mayoral candidates and the election coming up. I was like, all right, there might be some homework. There's some homework I got to do. And then when I was like over the weekend, I look into it and it's like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah. No. Yeah.
there's nothing here.
No,
So then I'm
it's a
like, well,
real
what is this
issue,
about,
yeah.
right?
Like-
And so then that like, what is this election about? Like, I'm not gonna hear a bunch of stuff people saying, oh, Lenny Curry is Donald Trump, like trying to
No.
tie people to national election.
And that bothers me
come on.
also, where when I hear that and people go,
Yeah.
oh, he's just another Republican. I'm like, well, what does that mean? I'm like, a Republican in Jacksonville is different than a Republican in New York or a Republican in Tennessee. It's like, it is local. You can say it's national. It's
Oh, but
not.
that's that my
it's
team versus your team
100%.
thing.
People
Like,
just want to
yep.
win. It's like, but you want to win so bad that you'll let
Yeah,
a
they-
criminal be in your house. I mean, think about it.
do,
It's
yeah.
it's like we said. It's about sports. People want to win so bad that they'll turn a blind eye when their team hires that criminal that's the best player on the
Yes.
field.
Yes, they will.
And they won't go, oh, well, they deserve another chance. They didn't mean it.
Yep.
And
Yep.
by the way, we won.
Yeah. That's what it comes down to also, which is like, and knowing that, like, on the ground level as a community, it's like, okay, so we're aware that, like, people have that mentality. We still need to reach them anyway, so you got to have someone on your team, even if that we all know that doesn't mean anything because we're having these conversations, but, not everyone's having them, so it's still part of the strategy at the end of the day. So the fact that, like, those basic like strategic bases weren't covered is alarming to me on a level that, like, it makes me look at the deeper issues just with organizing in Jacksonville. I'm like, why can't, or there's a lot of whys, I guess, but, like, to me it's like, how do we fix the issues with organization as a community? Because this is an eye-opener. I didn't realize it was this disconnected, that we wouldn't even have a candidate on both sides, that it would just be like this kind of a race. And then going even further, and then the candidate we do have that is somewhat open, or at least, shows face at community events and stuff, doesn't even have, like, a clear plan that she's willing to give to people, because, again, she still has some of, like, the big corporate sponsors that she doesn't want to upset. So it's just like, what do we do now?
And it's not like the community won't come out. Let's face it.
Yeah,
I mean,
we went blue. We're blue ball.
And also, just face it. This is a town that'll come out and tailgate from the top of the morning to the end of the morning, and that's across the spectrum: black, white, red, yellow, bright. It doesn't matter if there's a tailgate going on. So, how do we
gotta
get
organize
people
it.
excited about the community, about elections, about government?
If you build them, they will come. Like, we got to build it. Like, it's just, it seems like simplistic almost, like, and naive to say it, just to sum it up like that. But it's very, very true. You have to organize, and you have to organize effectively enough to reach the people and not insert so much ego, so that, like, even if, because I have personal views that I don't necessarily share in my, like, public platform, you know what I mean? Because it's like the way my experiences with certain institutions aren't necessarily the same way that I don't want people to judge my entire classroom by, like, the actions and experiences of one student. I has no place in community. There's an I in the word community, but let me rephrase that. But, like, my ego is not really the focus, because that would be an agenda. Even though I'm not getting paid, that would be an intrinsic agenda. It's not about that. Like, I don't even care if nobody knows my name, but everyone's talking about JPAC. Like, because that's something that will live. Like, individuals die off, but like your community will thrive, and
The
it's
ideas live on.
yeah, you know.
And I think we're all sophisticated enough. Like, I know I'm sophisticated enough to have the conversation with someone in the same sentence to say, yeah, I still get nervous when a police car pulls behind me.
Right.
Not doing anything wrong. I don't speed. People laugh at me. They're like, what are you doing? I'm like, it's the speed
that
limit.
Won't change for us.
But at the same time, I'm the same person that if I go to a corner store or go to Walmart at 12 in the morning to go pick something up, and I see the cop car sitting out there, I'm also happy to see. So it's like that weird dichotomy that you live in every single day.
Right.
But then you have people that just don't want to hear it. The second you open your mouth and say something, oh, you're anti.
That's why,
I don't give people my full background all the time. Where it's like, plenty of people I grew up with, people that are still cops.
Right.
So it's kind of like you're telling me that I'm anti, and I'm like,
you were happy like me when Blackish came out. You know what I'm saying? And it could explain some of this stuff. Some of this
living
stuff
in both worlds.
Yeah,
the code switching we talk about all the time.
Especially in corporate. In corporate, you know, that's the way of life, right?
No, it's definitely tough. It's like, yeah, you know, life is just more complex in every level. So, including this conversation about the police, it's not just anti or pro or thin blue line versus whatever, whatever they call us, rioters, anti. It's just like proposing ideas to make our community better should not be immediately met with hostility. And part of the problem is a lot of people have their own, it goes back to agendas, have their own ideas. They want to do the George Zimmerman thing. They think that that's what it means. But, like, just having sit-downs and clear understandings about this one, I think, is really important, because this is one where it's like the cops have so much it's like their job is to police. Like, that is their job. Like, we shouldn't really be throwing all this other stuff on them. Like, if we create a board and ideally the people we elect for the board are, like, experts in certain areas, and it's, like, a diverse board of community members, like, cops who deal with, like, let's say, you have a group of, like, 10 quote-unquote good cops, and then you have the one cop who thinks he's above the law. And it's like nobody really knows how to deal with that cop. It's just like they shouldn't have to worry about that. Like, that shouldn't be part of their everyday thing that they have to worry about. They should just worry about what they're supposed to be doing. And then that cop will get dealt with by people who are outside of the police force, so no one can feel weird or uncomfortable about it.
Because then you don't have to feel like you're turning in that person that's on your own, and then now people are looking at you, and it's like, well, if I make them, it's the Monday morning quarterbacking of, I get it. You go out there every day. You're right. The police should just be allowed to do their job.
Yep.
Problem is, when you don't have clear-cut guidelines, you don't have, there's differences between different communities, different police organizations with how they even deal with every single issue.
Exactly. They
and
all have different protocols.
The average citizen is going to be upset because all they hear is, oh, they're administratively, they're administrative. And I'm like, well, in your job, if something happens and it's under review, do you expect to be fired immediately, or do you expect, to be on restricted duty? So it's like, how can you, in the same token, in your, career, expect to have certain protections, but then it turns around, but then there's no inconsistency, and then it's like, somebody died. How do you?
Yeah, the problem too is, like, cops who commit misconduct, people's lives are taken away, like their freedom's taken away, or they die. So it's like there's a lot at stake for that too. But then also, it goes back to every other job has an outside apparatus that is. Do you know there's actually a law? So one of the big problems we do have in Jacksonville is the state of Florida has a law that actually prevents a JPAC from forming. So there's the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. Florida Statute 112.532 explicitly states that there cannot be, like, a formation outside of law enforcement. And ex-officer Tony Cummings, the guy who's running for sheriff against Mike Williams, he knew about that too. So that was, I'm sure they all know about it, but he spoke about it explicitly. And he was like, there is the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights that is the hurdle. We would have to remove that legislation, which is very true. That is part of the push for JPAC, but we have to get people to even be open to the idea first, to have the push big enough to repeal a law. That law got put into place during, it was on the tail of Jim Crow, but it was like more during like the Black Liberation Movement. And it was basically a thing called Garrity rights. So there was Garrity versus New Jersey Supreme Court case. Basically, they used the Fifth Amendment to say that this cop who's being questioned it threatened his, it was self-incriminating, basically. So there was a lot of confusion about what that meant, though. So nobody really understood. The Supreme Court basically was like, well, we're going to issue Garrity rights now to officers because their jobs have a lot of other things going on, and, the Fifth Amendment can extend to, protect them this way and that way. But it was never really defined what Garrity rights are. So then there was another one, Gardner and Broderick, another Supreme Court case, and the cop used Garrity rights, and nobody still knew what that meant. So they just ruled in favor of him. He was like, I don't have to answer these questions about the crime I committed, self-incrimination, Garrity rights. And since there was no clear definition of what Garrity rights meant, they ruled in favor of the cop. They said it was unconstitutional to question him for this crime that he was being questioned for. So then 14 states, Florida is one of the 14, came up. They pretty much realized, like, hey, we can create our own explicit Garrity rights, and called it the Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights. It's called the Bill of Rights as a play on our Bill of Rights. Every civilian has a Bill of Rights. You know what I mean? It's like every civilian's protected under the Fifth Amendment, but they made extra due process protections for themselves. And this is an outdated legislation. It came right during the women and LGBT rights movement. So Stonewall Inn had just happened, where like LGBT people were fighting police riots. Black Power was happening, and women had just passed Roe v. Wade, so they were coming out about domestic violence with, their counterparts who were cops. So the police at the time were like, well, we need to make up our Garrity rights so we can protect ourselves from these allegations. So it really was a way to avoid accountability. Now there's other states who still have their LEOBOR, Law Enforcement Officers Bill of Rights, but they've changed it. It's like just through time has been like, okay, this one.
It's modernized.
Yeah. Jacksonville's, I encourage people to look it up.
So do you think, what happens to that candidate for sheriff that now comes out and says, I want to have this overturned? Do you think they lose support of the unions? Do they,
Well, here's the thing. What I think, this might be cynical, so I'm not really sure, because this is my first time hearing him actually explicitly talk about it, because it was our first time to actually ask him directly about it. He has his idea of what a JPAC would be, and I'm not sure that it's exactly what we're asking for. Remember, everybody has their version of this idea, their version of police accountability. So he seemed to understand everything we were saying, because he knew about the law and he knows about the pushes that are happening in other places. So it's nice that he's open to hearing us. But as for what will he actually do, I can never speak on what candidates are going to do when they actually get elected, because sometimes what they say isn't necessarily on the same level, and I'm not sure that
elections and governing are two different things.
He didn't mislead any of us. He said that he was aware. The moderator asked the questions, and again, this is an abstract concept to a lot of people, but he immediately knew what we were talking about and immediately brought up the obstacle that we are also aware of, but he reiterated for people who weren't, which was awesome. So that told me he knew exactly what we wanted, which was a breath of fresh air. But he told us to go and, he has his ideas for community involvement, which to me says he already has what he wants to do, and that doesn't necessarily mean it's what we're asking for. But either way, to be fair, that is a step in the direction that we want to see. We still just want to see somebody who at least at the very, baby steps. Somebody who is at least open to our ideas, who knows what we're talking about and isn't immediately dismissive, doesn't paint us out to be anti-cop, rioters, crazy violent protesters and stuff, but like hears us and is like, yes, I know what that is, and my gears have been turning on it as well. Because then in the like, let's say he does get elected, then we can at least know we can have a conversation with him, whether he listens or not. You know, I think then we can start organizing on the offense instead of on the defense. If we're talking about teams and sports, like, I feel like under current administration, we've been strictly on the defense. We've been strictly defending our positions, like defending all the like allegations that we're trying to do this, that, and the other thing, and just like defending our positions. I feel like if we have a candidate who's already open, then we can start operating on the offense. It's like, okay, you hear our idea, you know the things, but you don't want to do like this part. Well, now we're going to organize and get enough community support to work on that one kink, and then keep working together.
Because then it becomes people for something and not just against something.
Yeah, not
where
just like,
where these days all people hear when you have a counter idea is, oh, you're just against me, as opposed to, no, I'm just for a better way. It's like, why can't I be for something without you automatically saying, well, if we give you this, then I lose. You know, when the community improves, when things get better, everyone wins.
Exactly.
You know,
because there's some people who are benefiting from the way that it is and the way that it's been, and as it is right now, those people don't really want to see this change. So that is their tactic, is to think that we're against them when we're really for just the majority of the community. So it is easy to twist it that way because it protects their interests. So my thing is, candidates might not know exactly what JPAC is, but I want to have an avenue to be able to communicate it with them without them freaking out or twisting the words, and just being open to ideas, because then our organizing can change to offensive organizing rather than defensive.
All right. Again, we're here live at the D&G Deli and Grill at 233 East Bay Street. We're going to take a short break, and we'll be right back.
Numerous and varied, greatly diverse and manifold. All the things I want to say that never been told. Dina Sinatra to Drake and Pharrell. When I'm listening to this week, you can never tell. Bogey and Bacall, even Meryl Streep. The devil wears Prada, even the big sleep. It doesn't matter where you stand. I'm the multifarious man.
try to make sure you vote. Try to make sure you do early voting if you can. If you can't, try to look up how to do mail-in ballot, or try to go the day of. Maybe request off work in time if you need to. That's one of the obstacles for working class families is it's during work hours, of course. So
and early voting does start on March 4th.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes, exactly. So just try to do what you can to make sure that you can get your voice out there through this avenue. I know it's not always the best, and a lot of people are apathetic, and it's got a lot of flaws, but it's what we've got for now. It's just, understand it's just one avenue. It's not the avenue. It's not the only thing. Get involved in the community as well. We do have a lot of sway over these politicians, but it's through numbers. So join an organization, get out there, see what's going on, find your passion, and just plug in.
All right, thank you again. And for, to close out the show this week, I'm going to talk about my book of the week. The book of the week is The Warmth of Other Suns, and this is a book by Isabel Wilkerson, and it did win the she's a winner of a Pulitzer Prize. Now, this book is about the epic story of America's Great Migration. So basically, it's about it's chronicling one of the great untold stories of American history. It's the decades-long migration of black citizens who fled the South from northern cities and western cities in search of better life. So from 1915 to 1970, this exodus of almost 6 million people changed the face of America. So what she did, she interviewed more than 1,000 individuals and gained access to new data and official records to write this definitive and vividly dramatic account of how the American journeys unfolded, altering our cities, our country, and ourselves. So again, this is The Warmth of Other Suns. Also, what I've been listening to this week, actually, and one of these albums came out yesterday. So everyone knows Beyonce, but did you also know that she has a super talented sister, Solange?
You should know if you don't.
And if you don't, just this young lady, this new album that she just came out, which is actually called When I Get Home. Since she came out with her last album, a couple of years ago, she's been doing something very unique. She's been traveling the country. She's been doing like live art shows with performance art. Just think about it. Poetry, dance, very visual about what she does. So she's very creative. The music, her voice, her sound, everything just flows so well. It's like you put the album on, listen to it, you can vibe out, you can learn something. She's very, very specific in her art. It's not just that she's so different than what's out there now. She has her own unique voice, and she'll tell you, if you read interviews and articles, a lot of it was from her. She grew up, she became an adult, she had a child. It changed her view on life. This is not just the lady that was beating up on Jay-Z in the elevator. She has a full story. She's completely three-dimensional. She's just not, an internet meme.
Exactly. No, I love Solange. So I think you summed it up perfectly.
And then the second album that actually came out last week, this cat from Austin, Texas, Gary Clark Jr. If you ever want to hear someone, when they throw out the word prodigy, this young man is a guitar prodigy from way back. He was playing on stage with the big boys when he was 8, 9, 10, getting on stage with the top blues guitars, playing with Clapton. And this album that he just came out called This Land, it's a very personal piece. It doesn't fall specifically into any genre. You listen to it, it may sound like reggae, it may sound like country, it may sound like blues, it may sound like R&B, a little bit of rap in it. But the title track, This Land, it deals with a very personal story of racism and, how he's had to deal with it growing up in the South, now where, he's basically made it, but he's reminded that some places you go, some places you're around, doesn't matter how much money you have, doesn't matter the nice house you live in, people still don't believe you belong somewhere. So take a chance, listen to it. Even if blues is not your thing, you'll be surprised. You'll find yourself listening to it, and he does not pigeonhole himself. Listen to this album and then go back and listen to some of his other albums like Bright White Big City, which was an EP at first, and then he came out with an album. But he's been on the scene a few years now. People down in Austin have been hearing about him for years. Definitely worth checking out.
What was his name again?
Gary Clark Jr.
Gary Clark Jr. Thanks.
All right, and that's it for this week. Multifarious Man Podcast Live. Again, thank you everyone for coming out. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Beeman from BK Thing, called Beloved. That's it. We are out of here.